guys, it's Jenny.
And this is Alexa.
And we're back with another edition of Checked Out. Today, because Halloween is coming, we're talking about spooky stories.
That's our favorite horror and generally scary books.
Or just mildly scary if you were a big chicken like me.
Yeah.
Joining us today for the podcast is our special guest, Brian Hocevar. Brian is a librarian here at the Northside Branch Library. He's also a published author. He wrote The Witch of Bracken's Hollow under the name Evan Winters, which is very scary. So scary that I refuse to read it. But Brian, we sort of have a gamut here of people and scary books because I don't do scary. You do a little scary, right, Alexa?
I do, yeah. I can handle it a lot better in book form than I can in screen. Like seeing all of the gore and the terrifying things presented to me is a lot different. So I'll read pretty much anything. And I do. I read a pretty wide gamut of scary things. So,
but Brian's our horror master here.
An actual fan.
An actual fan of the genre.
Not master, but an actual fan.
So we're going to run through some of our recommendations for scary books and maybe even a few scary movies to watch this Halloween weekend if you're looking for something fun to do. And I'm going to start off because I'm the wuss here. And my recommendations for scary books start with the one adult book I'm gonna mention is The Shining by Stephen King.
Solid pick.
It's a classic,
yeah.
Right? We've all seen the movie. If you've seen the movie, you should still definitely read the book because the book is different than the movie. One, it's better, I think. And two, there's more backstory. The thing that gets me about The Shining, the movie, is that you don't really delve into where these ghost figures came from. Like, I want to know, like, this creepy twins, what's their backstory? Yeah. And King gives that to us in the book. We get more information. So, also, the mom in the movie really drives me nuts. Anybody else?
Yeah,
I get it.
She bothers me. I end up screaming at her. So I like in the book, she's a little bit more, I feel like, resilient.
She probably seems like a person would actually be
in that situation.
Which isn't necessarily fun to watch.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right?
no. I would
She's
be locked
pretty
in that wine
screamy.
cellar.
Yeah.
So did you say you like the book or the movie better?
I like the book better.
Oh, very good.
I like the
That's a big
backstories.
bone of contention among
horror fans,
and
right?
Stephen King fans and Stephen King himself.
Yeah.
Did we talk about this the other day?
Yeah, Stephen King doesn't like
He hates it.
Doesn't like the movie.
Hates
the
it.
Kubrick
Yeah.
version, yeah.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. Kubrick does his own thing.
Yeah, he
Kubricks up anything he does.
All over it,
Yeah.
exactly. That's right.
He really
He
does.
just Kubricked it.
He did. There's an entire documentary. I can't remember the title. It's the name of the
Room 238.
Room 238. I tried to watch it, and I was just like, this is too much. It really just delves into the Kubrickiness of The Shining, and it's like, let's look at this one panel from this one picture that's on the wall at this one still frame in The Shining, and I was like, whoa, these people need to calm down. This is a lot.
His brain functions like a faster shutter speed than the rest of ours, I think.
It really did,
I think that's what he was doing there.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Well, Kubrick's work really invites that kind of, maybe a little bit like David Lynch, that notion that if you stare at it long enough, it's going to mean something bigger.
Yeah, and it's true, and you really can do it. I mean, I love A Clockwork Orange. I really like that, and I feel like it's kind of the same, where it's like you really can kind of like freeze frame and like let's look at all the different things that he included in this shot. But it's just a lot. It's a lot to make a documentary about.
So maybe skip the documentary, but read the book.
Yes.
For sure read The Shining, the book. It's fantastic.
You like Stephen King, enjoy the book better.
And it's different. The ending is different. So even if you've read the book or seen the movie, the book is different. So you're not missing anything. Mm-hmm. My other two favorites, one is probably the scariest book I read as a kid. So if you have elementary schoolers who maybe are starting to want to kind of push the limits and read some scarier stuff, I highly recommend The Witches by Roald Dahl.
Solid pick.
It was also turned into a very good movie with Angelica Houston. To this day, I give Angelica Houston the side eye in everything I see. It's probably the first book I remember reading where adults were kind of actively plotting against children, as they are in this book, turning kids into mice and all kinds of creepy things. They have purple eyes, and it's just all over fantastic.
I think that's one of the best things about Roald Dahl is that he constantly makes adults the bad guys in his book. I feel like a lot of times kids' books are written by adults, and so typically adults are kind of portrayed in a sympathetic light, or they're helpful, or something.
Right.
Roald Dahl just straight up hates and distrusts all adults, and so...
Well, or at least they are maybe negligent.
It's true.
Willfully negligent. Like Matilda, the parents they're horrible people, but they're not like actively hurting Matilda. They're just negligent.
Yeah.
You know, the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Willy Wonka is not terrible. He is kind of negligent as children are falling into vats of chocolate around him.
Right.
But
then there's like George's Marvelous Medicine, where it's literally just about a child trying to poison the adult supervisor in his life.
See, now I have not read that one.
Because she's so terrible.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I didn't know that one either.
George's Marvelous Medicine was one of my favorites. It's literally just like a book-long list of all of the poisons that this child puts into this concoction to feed to the person watching him.
So parents, maybe not that one, but definitely the witches.
I mean, I enjoyed it as an 8-year-old. I don't know.
If your kids had something scary. And then my other one, and I really think this guy is the heir to the Roald Dahl throne of children's books, and that is Neil Gaiman's Coraline. He writes a lot of stuff for adults. His adult stuff's great. His stuff for kids, to me, is where he really shines. Coraline is about a little girl, moves into a new house. Her parents are busy. They don't have a lot of time for her. And she finds kind of like an alternate universe family that's just like hers, except they have button eyes. And creepy things start to ensue, and Coraline has to make some pretty tough choices. But it's sort of like the witches, and that there's that one dead giveaway in the eyes that these adults are different than the good adults. And I don't know, it's a fun read. It is creepy. It kept me up after reading it, but younger kids will probably really enjoy it. So those are my top 3. For some things a little bit scarier, Alexa, what do you recommend?
Well, I can kind of go the same way that you did. I've got a couple J books. I've got some teen stuff. I've got some adult stuff that I really like. I was talking to you both about the book that I read most recently, Thornhill by Pam Smye. This is a J fiction book. We have it cataloged in juvenile fiction at LPL. It's pretty dark. I would highly, highly recommend it if you're looking for something atmospheric, really spooky to read. It's a quick read because it is told in alternating chapters. There are written chapters set in 1987 or 82, sometime in the 80s, told by a young girl orphan in England in an orphanage that is about to be shut down. And then the other chapters are illustrated entirely. So they're just full-page illustrations that tell the story of a girl in 2017 who moves in next door to the orphanage that has been dilapidated.
What is it with the English and scary children's books?
I don't know. There's something about really spooky, abandoned orphanages, I think, that just calls out to British authors. You mentioned Neil Gaiman in his Sandman graphic novel series. In one of the many subplots, there is a subplot about an abandoned orphanage filled with orphaned ghost boys.
Maybe it's the weather.
I think that probably helps. It's very just like gray, and that's really, the illustrations in Thornhill are they're all black and white, and so it's like very gray and spooky, and there's like this weird overgrown garden with all these little puppets that keep getting left outside, and it's really spooky, really, it's intense for a J read, I have to say. As far as teen stuff goes, one of my absolute favorite recommendations for any teen ever is Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. It's a graphic novel, and it is a series of short horror stories. Emily Carroll is a illustrator, and she has a website online, and she first got famous for her webcomics. So she does these really elaborate webcomics that you click through a page at a time, and every so often there will be a GIF, a moving picture. Terrifying, absolutely terrifying. Her most famous work is called His Face All Red, which is included in Through the Woods, and it's literally one of the spookiest comics that I have ever read in my entire life. I don't want to talk about it at all because I don't want to give anything away. It's really short, and you can actually read that one online as well as check out the book in the library. There are some stories that are included in the book Through the Woods that are not on her website. Emily Carroll is great. She actually has a video game, too, that you can play. It is available on Steam. It is called The Yogg. So if you enjoy Emily Carroll's art style and her kind of quirky nature of her illustrations, you would really like The Yogg as well. It's super fun to play, and it's a quick game, too. So that one's really good. I'm just going to go with my graphic novel theme. And I'm going to say, I already mentioned The Sandman. The Sandman is quintessential horror comic. Everybody should read The Sandman at some point in their life. The first one is Preludes and Nocturnes. Go read The Sandman by Neil Gaiman. You will thank me later. And my favorite adult spooky graphic novel that I have read in recent years is probably The Gigantic Beard That Was Evil. And it is by Stephen Collins. It's not as funny as it sounds.
Oh.
It's very, like, existential horror. So it's not gory, and it's not necessarily overtly scary. It's kind of like I said, existential in that it's like society is the scary thing. But there is a giant evil beard. That's true.
Okay, good.
It's not like trying to lure you in with the quirky title. There is a giant beard, and it is very evil. And the book is very scary. It's very minimalistically drawn. It's all black and white too. And yeah, it's very kind of oppressive. Kind of if you've ever read House of Leaves, that it's kind of got that same kind of claustrophobic, oppressive, like your surroundings are kind of out to get you feel to it in the same way, except it's kind of the surroundings and the people and the gigantic beard that was evil.
So there is a beard.
There's a beard.
Okay.
And the beard is evil.
I thought this was going to be like the Eddie Izzard book where he has jazz chickens in the title, but there are no jazz chickens in the entire book.
There's a beard.
Okay, good.
It's real evil.
Okay.
It's not funny though. The title, I picked up the book initially. I was like, this seems funny. It's not real funny. It's not very funny. It is spooky. And it will kind of creep you out. So it's perfect for this time of year, I think.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, and now on to our horror master, our big fan of the genre. Brian, what are your top choices?
Well, I picked a Stephen King book myself.
Well, he is the master.
He is. So my pick was Pet Sematary.
Yeah.
Solid.
Yeah. So Pet Sematary comes from it's a personal pick for me. Back when I was in school, when I was it must have been 7th grade, because I remember myself being 12 years old. We had a book fair. Do they still have those?
They do.
Yeah,
They did when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I think they still have them.
Yeah.
Scholastic book fairs are still around.
Scholastic book fairs.
I always
exactly
want to
what
go
it was,
into
right?
when I see the signs for it. I want to break it. I want to go into the school to the book fair.
Exactly.
And be like the creepy adult, just randomly.
They were
wandering
so much
through.
fun.
Right. And the book that I picked up in 7th grade was Pet Sematary.
They had that at your
I know, I was
Scholastic
gonna
book
say.
fair?
Exactly
Would
right.
they do that today?
No.
That's right. I think it was a different
It
world.
must not have
It
been
must
Scholastic.
So I had a copy of Pet Sematary, and
That's awesome.
And anyone who's read that story, I think the famous story about it is that Stephen King, he was in the 70s, he was writing like mad, and he had a stack of books, and he had Pet Sematary. He had this book, and he thought he wasn't sure if he was going to publish it, because he thought this might be a little bit too sick, this might be a little bit too much, and he discovered that his audience actually was a lot weirder than he thought.
And he just kept on keeping on.
He kept on keeping on.
Because,
Exactly
oh my gosh,
right.
it's gotten so much worse.
Exactly. So
Pet Sematary.
I guess he thought, well, if you can handle that, let me introduce you to Annie Wilkes.
Yeah, there you go.
I think the thing about Pet Sematary, the other story that he talks about is how writing one particular scene in the book was the hardest thing that he's ever had to write, and that is not to spoil it, but there's a death.
Yeah.
There's a death in the book, and he says writing that death, because it is the death of a child, was the hardest thing he'd ever had to write. And I think for parents, there's this extra level of super creepiness
Right.
super terrifyingness to Pet Sematary, because it is about a desperate parent's desire to save a child, and that adds just a whole nother layer to it.
Well, especially in the early books, I think what Stephen King really had going, he had some of the best. Lots of people have ideas for stories, but man, his ideas were so good, so catchy. I mean, they got you right. What if there was this pet cemetery behind this old house? What if there was a cemetery behind that? What if it had these powers? And it starts with the cat. Mm-hmm. And then what happens if someone's little boy dies? You really, that book drags you through the muck pretty well, and you find yourself. It's a fascinating thing in the story when for me anyway, as a reader, when I find myself engaged in what a character is doing something just outrageous, and I can feel it. I can see how they got there. Like, I can see how I would get there.
This is the genius of his work. This is the genius of The Shining, too.
Yeah, just normal
Absolutely.
people.
Yeah, and this is why I like the book The Shining better than the movie. You see more of that gradual descent into madness that I think the movie kind of... I mean, it's Jack Nicholson once, so he appears on screen, and you automatically go, well, that guy's not right. He just gives off that aura. And then pretty soon after, he's seeing ghosts, and he's getting crazy. But in the book, it's a much slower descent, which I think makes it creepier.
Yeah.
You see it happening. You see how it could happen.
Yeah.
I think that's true.
Yeah, it's just Jack Torrance instead of
Right. Instead of Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson.
It's just Jack Nicholson being Jack Nicholson, which is creepy, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
If I saw the man in a dark alley, I'd run.
Yeah.
But,
He's got a certain kind of air about him.
yeah, very much so. Very much so.
So Pet Sematary would be my classic pick. So another book that I would recommend, and I would recommend to LPL customers, is a mammoth tome by the name of The Weird. The Weird came out of I think it's 2012, and it's a collection of shorts of weird fiction dating from the late 1800s to current day. Have you all read much weird fiction, or do you know much kind of what the...
No, I don't at all.
Okay. No, okay.
No,
so
yeah.
so weird fiction is sort of an offshoot of horror, I think.
Okay.
You can get a feel for that if you look at some of the names in the book here. Like Algernon Blackwood is in it. H.P. Lovecraft is in it.
Okay.
But
Maybe I have read some.
yeah. Well, so weird fiction talks about a kind of fiction where it's a sort of speculative fiction that it has components of horror, but also sometimes components of science fiction, or just basically tales of the macabre that take ideas and sort of spin them to their nth degree. I think that the author who's really well known right now for that is H.P. Lovecraft. Lovecraft was somebody. I don't think he was quite as famous in his life as he is now. I could be wrong about that.
No, I think that you're pretty much
Yeah,
right on.
Yeah. And Lovecraft has really caught on like a dance craze over the last 20 or 30 years. I think part of it owing to, and this gets into, for lack of a better word, geek culture. But part of it owing to, have either of you been to like the Lexington Comic-Con, or have you picked up on how much Lovecraft lore there is out there?
Oh, yeah.
There's so much Cthulhu stuff.
I mean, Neil Gaiman has written fanfic for Lovecraft.
Right,
I mean, like,
exactly.
he's got Shoggoth Soul Peculiar, which is just like a love letter short story to him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very pervasive in even really famous authors' works, I think.
Right. So on one hand you have this speculative fiction that was very catchy. It wants to be picked at. And then on the other hand, I think it owes a little. Its popularity owes a little bit to copyright laws, because
it's free game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
His stuff exists in the
Public domain.
In the public domain.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
It's true.
And if you look at copyright law, that can get really interesting. It all hinges around a mouse, actually, Mickey Mouse.
Right.
And copyright law has been being tweaked in.
So Disney can hang on
So
to...
Disney,
I
exactly.
see,
That's
I
right.
see.
That's right. Right. So the weird. So the weird would be a fantastic place to go. You can read Algernon Blackwood and Franz Kafka, but then Joyce Carol Oates and Michael Chabon and Laird Barron, some more contemporary authors as well. Oh, I forgot Julio Cortázar is in there. He's an all-time favorite of mine. This would be a fantastic. It's 1,300 pages.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I actually I
It's
have,
the Harry Potter of weird fiction.
yeah, I actually have it on my Kindle. I prefer it on my Kindle because it's too big to hold.
It's like a Norton's anthology or something. It's got does it have the newspaper print, super thin pages?
I can't. You know what? I can't remember.
All my old Nortons do. That's the good thing about short story collections that
exactly.
is, you don't have to just sit down and read it cover to cover. You can pick and choose. You can jump around.
take your time with it.
Yeah,
I think.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about short stories, I think.
So my final pick, and this is newer. This just came out this year, and I brought my copy in to show you so that it wouldn't just be me talking about it, but some of you are oohs and ahs. It's a graphic novel that just came out earlier this year called "My Favorite Thing Is Monsters" by Emil Ferris, I think is how you pronounce her name. I'm not entirely sure, and it's.
Oh, Alison Bechdel liked it.
Yeah,
That's cool.
This is, so you can tell just by looking at it. This is a mammoth piece of work.
Yeah, it is.
And the whole thing is drawn in. It's a graphic novel, and it's all drawn for the most part in ballpoint pen, in this really audacious, over the top kind of a style. And it's a story about a young woman, a teenager going through. Now that I think about it, I'm not 100% sure how old she is, but she's going through her junior high stuff,
Okay.
and she wants to be a monster. So all throughout the story, she is.
And you guys can't see it at home, but the way that the book is done is it looks like it is like a
Yeah.
junior high like notebook that someone has done drawings in, which
Exactly.
is
Yeah, it's
really
all on the
cool.
lined paper.
So you guys can take a look at it. She draws herself as a monster, as a little wolf person.
Yeah.
And as Jenny was saying, the pages literally look like they're taken from from a notebook from a junior high student's notebook. So this is just a really interesting graphic novel. Came out earlier this year. Apparently, I know because my wife Naomi got it for me for my birthday, and it came out and was so popular that it sold out right away, and it took a couple months for the next printing to come in.
It's beautiful.
Isn't it something else?
Yeah.
The only other book
really
I know
is.
of that did that was the Laura Ingalls Wilder autobiography, which is so very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it reminded me in a way of when you mentioned earlier House of Leaves. When that came out, I was in grad school, and I remember that coming out and just flying off the shelves.
Oh, yeah.
And it was, again, this is a debut. This is the first story. So let me book talk it a little to give you an idea of what it's really about. This girl who wants to be a monster. She doesn't want to be among the mob, as she calls it, the MOBs, the mean, ordinary, boring people. And it's set in Chicago in 1968. And this is there's a dichotomy at work here, because it's a child telling the story, but it is not a childish story at all. It starts with a death, and she begins to her upstairs neighbor, who is a very interesting character, a Holocaust survivor, dies, and she believes that the police say it's suicide. She believes otherwise. And so she begins to, as a monster detective, to work the case. So this story has a backstory of a Holocaust survivor, people living in the inner city Chicago, poverty. They're surrounded by poverty. It's 1968, so there's all kinds of political upheaval. And the thing I love about this book is that while it's about a little girl who wants to be a monster, you really do get the feeling of what is monstrous about the normal folks. What is monstrous about us as people. I mean, you get into the backstory of her neighbor surviving the Holocaust, and that was a case of the nice folks doing some very monstrous stuff.
Sure, yeah.
So this is a fantastic book, and I believe that Naomi discovered in that most librarian-esque sort of way, in that it just came in through the book drop. That is such a
That's
great,
the best way to
isn't
find
it the
books.
best?
Yes.
I love it when I find something comes through and it just catches your eye.
Yeah.
And
It's one of the real perks of working in a library.
the one thing I would that I would warn against, though, if you got into this, is I'm not even entirely sure if it says this, but this is actually volume 1. So you get to the end of this story, and it's a cliffhanger where you weren't expecting a cliffhanger, and so instead it's just unreasonable.
That is such just like a stomach sinking feeling when
yeah.
you think you picked up a standalone and it's not.
So I literally went online and to use some of that library foo, Googled what's up with the ending of.
Yeah.
And of course there were forums out there, and I guess other people also were kind of. It came as a surprise.
Yeah.
But it's definitely worth checking out.
Worth the investment. Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
that's book 1 right there on the slide.
There you go. You see, it just didn't jump out at me until. And,
That's really funny.
Right.
Clive Barker's done that to me before. His book series Abarat.
Okay.
I picked that up randomly off of the shelf in a bookstore when I was like 12 years old or however old I was the year it came out. Still isn't finished. Still waiting on a conclusion for that book series.
He's gonna George R.R. Martin.
Yeah.
It
He's
has
gonna drag
been
out
a
the ones he
while. It's been a really long time. I hope that one doesn't take as long.
Supposed to come out in April of next year.
That's good.
I think folks should definitely check this out and see what it's all about.
It's
But,
really beautiful. I know you guys can't see it because this is audio,
right,
but
that's-
it's really, even if you just come into the library to flip through it and admire the artwork, I
and
think
you
it would be
should
worth
come
your
into the
time.
library.
And we will put all these recommendations on our website as
Yes.
well, or on our catalog, so people can see these works and check them out for themselves.
But one of the things that I loved about this, and one of the reasons I want to talk about this particular story, is that I think there's something that horror fans, the people who aren't really into horror, or they're might not get, and that's that horror isn't necessarily all that horrifying or really scary. That it's beautiful. It's like that, for me that happened. I can pick a handful of things. One of them was picking up Pet Sematary. Another one of them. I want to say it was the same year. For some reason, I'm remembering the seventh grade being when I discovered all this stuff. Reading the Poe's Cask of Amontillado, right? Horror doesn't scare horror fans. It's beautiful. It's just a kind of beautiful that you have to learn how to see. You have to learn how to look at it in a certain light.
I think really good horror makes you confront something either about yourself or about life in general. And I think horror fans, in some ways, may be better adjusted, more well-adjusted, and that they can confront those things and learn from those things and see it and still be able to,
Good horror shouldn't just be about scaring or
right.
grossing you
so
out.
Stephen King can write these really disturbing things that make you, confront some hard topics.
Yeah.
And then he can go on about his life and his day.
Right.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people have a hard time reading his stuff because they're not ready to deal with some of those hard truths.
Yeah.
It's a really good point.
You could be a giant wuss like me and not like to be right. So one of the big questions we get asked at the library all the time this time of year, and I want to make sure we leave time for it, is movie recommendations. We're constantly being bombarded with scary movie recommendations. So I'm going to throw out my top picks, and again, I'm a wuss, so mine are going to be gore and, no Saw from me.
Yeah, that's fair.
One, The Shining, again. Just if you haven't seen it, you should see it, just so you're kind of in the know in pop culture. But then read the book, because the book is better. My other two, What Lies Beneath, with Michelle Pfeiffer and Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford is a terrifying bad man. Michelle Pfeiffer is his long-suffering wife. Scary things happen. This, along with The Shining, is probably sparked my distrust of bathrooms or bathtubs. There's a scary bathtub scene, much like there is in The Shining. So be wary of that.
That's a real hard undersell for how terrifying that movie is. It's so much more than just a scary bathtub scene.
It is a really scary movie.
It's extremely traumatizing.
I rented it back when you had to rent movies. I rented it in college, and I was almost, I was at like the really, like the pinnacle, the part at the end, and I had to go and get a friend on the hall to come sit with me and watch the end of it because I was too afraid to watch it by myself. I guess I thought Harrison Ford was going to burst into my dorm room and attack me. I'm not really sure. So What Lies Beneath, and then my other all-time favorite scary movie is The Others with Nicole Kidman. It's very gothic and very dark. It's about a woman in post-World War II England who lives kind of like on an island, an islandy area. You kind of get the impression, kind of remote. Her husband's been off fighting in the war. She has 2 children who are allergic to sunlight. So they have to, in an already very dark part of the world, because it's England, they have to be in even more darkness. So they have to keep the house extremely dark. So everything's kind of shot in shadows. So you can't, that's creepy enough because you can't really see full picture. And then these strangers show up to the house to work as help, basically, for Nicole Kidman as this very stressed out mom with these 2 special needs children. And it just takes some weird turns. It's very gothic. It's very sort of feels like a classic horror story, like very Wilkie Collins, Women in White. But I highly, highly recommend. There's a good twist at the end, too. Alexa, what about you?
Well, playing off Nicole Kidman, one of my favorite movies of all time, and I rewatch it every single fall, is Practical Magic.
Yeah.
Based off of Alice Hoffman's book of the same name. It stars Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman as sisters who are witches, and they live in the cutest little New England town ever. The movie's so pretty, and it's just really atmospheric and like autumnal and lovely.
And it's not necessarily a scary.
It's not. It's just kind of like
Has a moment.
it's kind of spooky, and it's like a good like light Halloween rom-com.
Yes.
There's
it is delightful.
It's really, really good. Aidan Quinn is in it, and he's just like peak Aidan Quinn, like 90s handsome. Like it's really real good. And Stockard Channing and Diane Weiss to play the aunts.
Oh, I love them.
And they're really, really cute in it. They actually, Alice Hoffman has a prequel to Practical Magic that either just came out or
just came out.
Yeah, it just now came out, called The Rules of Magic, which is a prequel about the ants.
Yeah.
Played by Diane Weiss and Stockard Channing in that film. So that's going to be really good. I'm excited to read that. Another movie that we spoke a little bit about before we began the podcast, The Orphanage by Guillermo del Toro, or El Orfanato. It is subtitled. It is a Spanish language film, and it's about a woman who used to be an orphan. She grew up in this orphanage, and she is now grown with her own child, and she and her family move back into the abandoned orphanage to make it their home, and then her son goes missing right after they move into the house. And it is a really good example. Like Jenny, I'm kind of a wuss when it comes to horror. It's not gory. There's maybe 1 or 2 instances of gore, and the camera pretty much pans away the minute it happens. So it's like, it's very, there's no blood or anything. It is just terrifying. It is haunting and just so, so creepy.
Guillermo del Toro is really good at that, though.
Yes, he is. He does such a good job of just atmosphere and just like dread whenever he's doing a horror movie. Pan's Labyrinth is the same way. I haven't seen The Shape of Water yet, his most recent movie, which is basically just an Abe Sapien prequel to Hellboy, but I'm really excited about that. I will say it. Doug Jones is in that as well. He's the creature in the water. We were talking about Doug Jones before the podcast also.
He's in everything.
He's in everything. If there's a tall, spooky monster in a movie you're watching, it is Doug Jones. I guarantee it. That's just the rule of cinema. My third movie, which I recommend to everybody because it's one of my all-time favorite movies, is Deep Blue Sea. It's another... everyone always laughs when I say it. I'm not kidding. It really is one of my favorite movies. I watch it every year on Halloween. Practical Magic and Deep Blue Sea are my must-watches for Halloween. It is a movie from the... either late 90s or early 2000s, starring Tom Jane before he was famous, before he did Punisher. Samuel L. Jackson in maybe one of the smallest roles he's ever taken in a film. And it's about a scientist who is trying to cure Alzheimer's, and so she has done experiments on these sharks, and she has made their brains larger in order to sample their brain tissue, and as a side effect, the sharks got smart. And so the sharks are hunting these people in an underwater research lab, and it's really campy and super fun.
It's like the Sharknado before Sharknado.
It is, yeah. LL Cool J's there. LL Cool J and Tom Jane. LL Cool J is the underwater lab. He is the underwater lab's preacher and cook,
Okay.
and he has a bird. And he talks to the bird a lot. The bird is named Bird. Everybody should watch Deep Blue Sea. It's super fun.
Well, so one thing that's really fascinating that friends of ours in Madison County, shout out to Madison County Public Library, they have a podcast called The Nerd Factor, which is great and you should listen to. But they talk about how a lot of horror movies actually pass the Bechdel test.
Yeah.
Which is the test to test how, I guess, how fair cinema is to women.
Yes.
And the test is fairly easy. It just has to have two women. They have to have a conversation, not about men.
Right. For like 3 lines.
For
I
like
think.
3 lines,
Yeah.
and it's surprisingly hard to find.
Most movies do not pass
Most movies
it.
do not, but a lot of horror films do, which is something going in its favor.
I'm trying to think if Deep Blue Sea passes or not. It might not. But there are 3 women in
LL
it.
Cool J, LL Cool J reminded me. He's also in. Is it Halloween? He's in one of the Halloween.
I think he's in
movies.
one of them,
Halloween
yeah.
H2O, I think.
Probably.
And that one passes.
Oh,
the Bechdel
nice.
test. So there you go.
There, yeah. Ooh, Zombieland is another good one.
Yes.
That made me think of funny horror movies. Zombieland is really funny.
And Shaun of the Dead
yes.
is another funny
that
horror
is a
movie.
good one.
That's
to
a good
throw
one.
out there.
Yes.
Brian, what about you?
Okay, so I think my first pick, and this is a great autumn pick, would have to be the original Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, it's so good.
Yes, 1969, shot in Pittsburgh. My parents are from Pittsburgh, and so when I was a kid, I would always hear about how it had Chili Billy Cardilli in it. He was a local DJ, and he had a creep show. He had and this would have been the late '60s. So he did as I understand, he did a scary movie like on the local TV.
Oh, okay.
He was like an Elvira horror movie host.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah,
I've seen that movie so many times. I never knew that.
Yes. He's only in it for he has a bit part in it.
That's really cool.
So the original Night of the Living Dead is a great autumn pick. So my next one is going to be a John Carpenter. I would go with In the Mouth of Madness. Now, John, have either of you seen this?
No,
Okay.
No, I haven't.
Carpenter went on an unholy run as a horror.
He was the horror director.
Look at his IMDb page. I would argue that he went on a Stephen King-esque
Yes,
run.
he did.
Yeah.
Like from the late 70s around, I don't know if you want to put Halloween or maybe The Fog. I can't remember even which one of those would have come first. Right up through the mid 90s. I think the first because even now I'm saying In the Mouth of Madness, I'm thinking he did The Thing. The Thing is the best.
The Thing
right?
is
I have to
phenomenal.
say The Thing.
The Thing is
But
phenomenal.
In the Mouth of Madness, I would pick because this one came out in the early 90s. It has Sam Neill, and he's playing a private investigator who's hired to go searching for a super popular horror author who's gone missing. And people are reading this author's books and going crazy. So it's a fantastic book. It's a fantastic movie for book lovers because it plays heavily into that theme, the theme of horror fiction and what and maybe it coming from a supernatural place.
I should watch that. I've never even heard of this movie, and I really want to watch it now.
In the Mouth of Madness. And then the next one I'm going to pick, also mid-90s. And you know what's funny is anytime I name this movie, people either love it or they hate it. Also mid-90s, also Sam Neill, Event Horizon.
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
But I've heard of it.
Okay, so Event Horizon it's a space movie actually. What the plot is that humanity has built its first deep space manned spaceship, and as I recall, it's been some time since I've seen it. So what happens is it disappears. It gets out by Jupiter and it disappears. And then sometime later, of course, all this happens before our story begins. It reappears, and it's sending a signal back from it being in orbit off Jupiter that it's back.
Something about space is just so inherently creepy.
Right.
I don't do space movies unless Will Smith is fighting aliens. That's a personal rule.
So our story revolves around Sam Neill and his group of people who are going out to the spaceship and to find out what the heck happened. And it gets into they went somewhere outside of space.
Too spooky for me.
Super, yeah.
That's terrifying.
It's a very, very frightening movie.
I could barely do the first Alien movie.
We have a fairly large contingent of librarians at LPL who do not like space movies, myself included, who find space movies really creepy, and I don't know.
Well, this is the fun thing about this is that it starts with that. I don't even know if it even really starts with a feeling of this is just going to be space and you're safe from horror, because the transmissions that are coming back aren't right.
Yeah.
And the more that they unpack it, the less right they get.
It's not like, hey guys,
yeah,
we took a wrong turn.
It's making me like itchy and uncomfortable.
took a wrong turn at Jupiter and ended up in hell.
So freaked out. I got like physically nauseous watching the trailers for Gravity. Like I can't do any space is just.
What about some fun Halloween movies, like fun camp, like Shaun of the Dead, of course, is great. Evil Dead.
Evil Dead is great if Evil Dead's a little straight. It's not super funny. Evil Dead is straight horror. If you want funny, go Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. Army of Darkness.
Yeah,
that's what I meant.
I was gonna say
Evil Dead and
Evil Dead 2 are both kind of. Evil Dead 2 is basically just a refilming of Evil Dead, but with a budget that Sam Raimi procured. Army of Darkness is really funny.
Campy and delightful.
Yes, Bruce Campbell is so good in it. If you want to delve deeper into the Bruce Campbell oeuvre, I might recommend Alien Apocalypse. It was released in 2005. I'm going to now display the cover to Jenny and Brian.
Oh, that is peak Bruce Campbell.
It is
for sure
excellent. It is Bruce Campbell is an astronaut. And he was up in space in his space station, and when he comes back to Earth, it has been taken over by aliens who feast upon wood. It is like peak Sci-Fi Channel movie. It's very ridiculous. One of my
like giant termites.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic.
And they've enslaved the human race. Bruce Campbell teams up with the president.
Okay.
To take the Earth back from the wood-eating aliens. One of my favorite lines in that movie. Bruce Campbell's like drunk and he's talking. He's like, oh, Earth used to be so great. And he's talking about what all he used to love about Earth. And he mentions TV. And one of the enslaved people says, what's TV? And he says, none of your damn business. And if that's not just like indicative of the entire movie, then I don't know what is. Everyone should watch it. You can get your hands on it, I'm sure, pretty easily. It's just a cheap sci-fi movie.
That sounds fantastic.
It's really good. Would recommend. 10 out of 10.
Well, I've got two then. This one is a movie, I think it kind of flies under the radar a little bit. I don't know, maybe you both have seen it and everybody knows about it. But this came out in the mid-90s. It was written and directed by Peter Jackson back before he was Peter Jackson.
Oh, is it Heavenly Creatures? No, before that.
No, let me see. This was 95, I think. 96.
Okay.
It stars Michael J. Fox, and it's a movie called The Frighteners.
Yay! I love that movie.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I've never heard of it.
Oh, Michael J. Fox is so great.
Super fun horror-themed movie where I can't remember why, but somehow Michael J. Fox has the ability to talk to ghosts.
Yeah.
And so
he doesn't need a reason.
Right, and so he sets up
He's like Winona Ryder in Beetlejuice.
Right. And he well, there you go.
That's a really good one too.
Jeez, I would have gone Beetlejuice. But he sets up a fakey sort of Ghostbusters type deal.
Another good one.
Where he's going to people's houses and getting the ghosts out of there, capturing them for him. But but we find out that they're actually his buddy ghosts. Like he's just a scam that they have that they're
really
running
funny.
over and over. But then it turns out that there's something really bad going on in the world of ghosts.
That's pretty usual.
Yeah, The Frighteners is a good one. Peter Jackson back before. You
can never go wrong with Michael J. Fox.
Yeah, exactly right. And then another one I would pick, and I thought I thought this is where you were going with Bruce Campbell.
With Alien Apocalypse.
Came from the early 2000s, Bubba Hotep.
Oh my gosh, I own that too.
Hotep.
I have an entire Bruce
too.
Campbell library, and Bubba Hotep is delightful.
Yeah, I think everyone needs to know about.
Tell everyone what Bubba Hotep is.
Yeah, do the rundown of the plot.
So, let me book talk this movie.
Yeah,
for you.
it's great.
Stars Bruce Campbell as an aged Elvis an actual Elvis.
A real Elvis.
He says he's actually Elvis.
He plays Elvis Presley, and the story is that Elvis got sick of fame and he traded off his place with an Elvis impersonator. So it was actually an Elvis impersonator who died in Graceland.
Right.
Now he is the real Elvis in a retirement home in rural Texas.
I just can't stop laughing when I think about it. It's so good.
Who of course no one believes.
Right.
They believe that he's
Like dementia.
Like
He
a
has
dementia.
dementia.
Yeah, he's elderly.
and so he teams up. Who plays the JFK?
I can't remember the actor's name.
I can't either.
But
And,
yeah, let me look it up real quick.
Oz,
We're going to find it. Hold
is it
on.
Ozzy?
I got you.
Oh, you know what?
Ozzie Davis.
Ozzie Davis.
Yeah.
Ozzie
plays.
Davis, yeah.
So Ozzy Davis plays someone else in the home who believes he's JFK.
And yes, we recognize Ozzie Davis is African American. That is part of the.
That's the joke.
That's the
The
joke.
running
and that
joke.
JFK
Exactly.
was
Black
yes,
JFK.
yes.
Yeah.
Right. And
That the government did something to him.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
exactly right. And the community is terrorized by an ancient mummy who was being transported by the government and who dropped off the back of
A truck.
truck.
Of a truck, yeah.
And now is preying on the all the folks in this retirement home.
Yes.
So
Their souls.
yeah, eating their souls.
Yeah.
This is just a fantastic movie. I can't remember now off the top of my head who the director is, but
It's funny. It's oddly sweet.
it's
It
funny.
is, yeah.
It's sweet. It's
Don Coscarelli is the
Don
director.
who directed Phantasm, I believe.
I think that you're right. Yeah.
So he has his chops at he has his a background in horror in I was going to say true horror, but this is comedic horror.
It is,
and, a lot of fun for folks who are looking for something fun.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Sidebar, I love that we're ending on Bubba Hotep, first of all. Second, I love that we've all three seen the movie
Yeah,
Bubba
absolutely.
Hotep.
Bubba Hotep!
It's so good.
If you take nothing else away from this episode, have checked out Rent or check out Bubba Hotep.
Yes.
If we don't have a copy, I will ensure that we get one.
We'll buy one.
Absolutely.
Don't
It
worry.
is a quality film.
It really is. Would recommend.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this edition of Checked Out. We hope you guys have a great and safe Halloween and enjoy some scary books and scary movies.
Yes, and thank you, Brian, so
Yes,
much for
thank you so
joining
much.
us.
Thanks for having me.
And
This
check
was
out
fun.
Brian's book, The Witch of Bracken's Hollow.
Yes.
By Evan Winters. The library has multiple copies. Check it out if you like scary books. It is wonderful. Thanks, guys.